Hey everyone! Today we're going to work with Ansible variables to practice for the RHCE. When it comes to exam objectives, we have this one, obviously, and there's this other one here at the bottom that talks about registering command results to a variable. Alright, so that's what we'll be covering in this video, and without further ado, let's get going. As usual, what we'll do to get started is just make a new project directory, and that'll just be project 6 for today's activity, and I'll cd into there. And just to save us some time, I'm going to go ahead and copy the project 5 ansible.cfg and inventory.ini file to this directory. And let me just cat that out so you can get an idea of what's going on. It's pretty standard stuff from the last video. And next, I'll just create a new YAML file, which I'll call experiment1.yml. And it's going to be a playbook this time. All right. So just give me one moment to fill this out with the basic skeleton of a playbook, and I'll be right back. Alrighty. This is a pretty boring looking playbook. As you can see, it doesn't do much. But what I really need to show you here is the vars directive. So you do this on the play level, and you can define variables in this area for your specific play. Now, there are some rules to follow for defining variables. Basically, you should just stick with regular letters and underscores, avoid dashes and periods, and not start a variable name with a number. I'll put up this table from the Ansible documentation for your reference, and what you'll see is that it also mentions to avoid using keywords from Python or Ansible playbooks as well, and that should help prevent conflicts. Okay, so with that covered, let's just go ahead and define some variables in this vars section. And we'll also make sure to delve into the world of YAML lists and dictionaries in just a moment as well. So I'm sure we're already familiar with variables that just store a single value or string. Like this, I could make something called satellite, hold the value Sputnik. Just like that, makes sense, pretty simple. And we can even have multi-line strings for our value by using the pipe character. For example, I could have a variable named compass, and I can use the vertical bar or pipe and start punching in some values for this variable that will be split up into multiple lines. So I could do something like north, east, south, west, and it's going to be on its own individual lines, or at least have the new line character. Okay, so that's pretty cool. But let's say that we wanted to fold the new lines into spaces. Well, we could use the greater than sign instead of a pipe. So I'll make a variable here called complement, and I'll use the greater than sign and then just put in a complement like you are cool, pretty cute. And yeah, that's all nice and good. It's going to take those new lines and convert them into spaces, or fold them into spaces, actually. Okay, so now let's just go ahead and try defining a variable that contains a list. I'll call this variable something like planets, and I'll just fill in some items here. Now remember to indent and use a dash and a space for each item. And I'll just fill this in. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and everyone's favorite, placeholder. Nice. So yeah, that's pretty good. And I'll make another variable here that contains a dictionary. So going along with this space theme, I'll call this one outer space. And I'll put some keys here like pressure equals low, radiation is high, and you get the idea. We can use a boolean here too, like is cold is true, and we can even nest dictionaries inside of this dictionary. Like I could have a key named objects, and inside of objects I have the sun, and the sun is it cold? No, it's not, so that's false. You know, like something like that. But that's pretty cool, and we can get even fancier though. Let's make a variable that contains a data structure made of both lists and dictionaries. I'll just write that out and give a quick example of that. One moment. Yep, here we are. We have a list, and each item in the list contains properties using the dictionary form. You can see that I had some fun with this. But now, let's try to access the values of these variables that we defined by going down here to tasks and using the debug module to print some vars with the var option, and then I can just give the name of a variable, like satellite. And this will just help us easily see that value. So that's pretty cool. Also with debug, as we've seen before, there's also the message option, which allows you to print out a full-on message. And so if I wanted to just print the value of one of my variables, such as complement, it's not actually going to work right away just like this. I'm going to need to template it, obviously. And since I'm starting this colon space with a curly brace character, I'm also going to need to quote this as well. And that's because we don't want to confuse the YAML parser about whether this is like a shorthand dictionary, right? So that's why we're quoting it. And anyways, we'll move on to printing one of our list items. So I can do debug var and then the planets list, and I'll just print number 4. Now remember that the index for a list starts from 0, just pointing that out. And we'll also do something similar with our dictionary item. So debug var, and then our dictionary was called outer space, and one of the keys was radiation, just like that. We can also drill down, just like before. I can show you the nested dictionary item with debug var outer space. And then our nested dictionary was called objects, and it included the sun, and there was a Boolean variable called is true, not is true, is cold, and that's right there. And so this is going to grab that Boolean value for the is cold property inside of this nested dictionary, right? Now in practice though, you're usually going to be using the templated form like this, because that's like what you would pass to most kind of options for modules in Ansible, right? So like I could switch this out for message, and it's going to work just fine if I do it this way as well. And yeah. So finally, let's try out our combo list and dictionary. We can grab a variable from there. So I'm just going to stick with the templated form this time. So I'll use a message again. And in here, I'm just going to pull out the user info and then item number 2, and then get the name, just like that. Simple, right? And when dealing with dictionaries, I strongly encourage using the square bracket notation like I'm showing here. That's also what the Ansible docs recommend as well. But the alternative is to use the dotted notation, which also just opens up the possibility for more conflicts. So those will be hard to debug. So it's just better to just type in the extra few characters to prevent that from happening in the first place. I can give you an example of the dotted notation though. Like I could do something like this. Just get rid of these, put some dots. And that should work out just fine, but we'll find out when we try this playbook. So I'll save this and I'll run an Ansible playbook experiment1.yml. And let's just see what happens. There we go. So it worked just fine. And yeah, you can see the folded string here for the complement variable. There's my planets and all that good stuff. Nice. Next, I'd like to show you the vars files directive. Now, sometimes you might want to keep your variables in a separate file. So I'm going to show you one way that you could do that. So I'm going to go back into the experiment1.yml file. And I'm going to go ahead and cut out all of the stuff that we put in vars. So I'll go into visual mode with the V key, and I'm going to go ahead and grab this stuff just like that. I think this is better. And there we go. And I'm going to create a new file called myvars.yml. And inside of this new file, I'm actually going to paste in what I just cut. And I'm also going to go ahead and fix the indentation as well. Just like this. There we go. And yeah, now I have a plain YAML file with the various variables in it. So that sounded kind of fun, but I'm going to save that. And I'm going to change this vars directive out for vars_files, just like that. And so this takes a list. So I'll just do my little dash right there. And I'm going to add the relative path to my new vars file in here. So that'll just be my vars.yml, just like that. And yeah, I'll just save this. And if I run the same playbook again, the output should be exactly the same as before, as long as I didn't mess anything up. So we'll try it out. And yeah, it looks good. Thanks to that refactoring, the output stayed essentially the same. So let's go over a couple of other ways to define variables. I've actually touched on some of these methods before, but to define host and group level variables, you have the option to do it in the inventory.ini file, or you could also use the file system with the host vars and group vars directories. Let me just show you the inventory method real quick. So I'm going to open up my inventory.ini file, and I can add a host var like this. So appserver1.labnet, and then I can say cool equals yes, just like that. We can also target a group with some variables. So I could do appservers vars, and then I could say something here like moon equals cheese, I guess, why not? And yeah, now this variable will be available when I have a play targeting the app servers. So I can save this and do an Ansible-inventory --list YAML, and it should pick it up. And yeah, so that moon cheese variable is available for all of the app servers, and the appserver1.labnet machine also has the cool variable. So, I mean, this has limitations like we've just seen with our YAML variable file. This inventory.ini is not an intuitive place to define some more complex data structures like lists and dictionaries. So this is where the host vars and group vars directories come into play. I've actually showed a little bit of how to do that in the SSH key distribution video, but basically it just boils down to making a directory called group vars and making a directory called host vars. And then from there, you can just put files in here that are named after each host that we want to assign variables under. For example, host vars appserver4.labnet.yml. Remember the .yml extension. But keep in mind that you can't do something like a range here. So I can't do 4:5 in brackets like that. For my testing, I've just not been able to get that to work. So stick to the inventory.ini file for that specific use case. Anyways, I'll just do appserver4 like that. And I can set a variable here. I'll call a variable ocean and just punch in some values like ocean props, it's deep, it's salty, it's blue, or something like that. And yeah, I can just save this file. And now if I check the Ansible inventory list command again, we'll see that those new variables and that new special data structure with the dictionary and the list has actually been picked up under this host. So that's good. Okay. Likewise, we can also set group variables. So we have the app servers group, that's pretty simple, but we also have the implicit all group up here. So let me just show you that, because I think that's pretty important. You essentially can have global, similarly to global variables. So group vars all.yml, or maybe I should just, let's try it with the .yml extension. So I could just say carrots are orange, banana is yellow, something like that. Let's try that real quick. Hopefully it doesn't break. Yeah, I was worried that the .yml extension would cause an issue, but it's not, it's fine. And yeah, so now this variable is accessible with all of the hosts in my inventory. See, banana yellow, carrots orange, moon cheese. Well, that one's just for the app servers, but you get the idea. Pretty cool. And yeah, one more thing is that you can define extra variables to the Ansible command with the -e option. So check this out. Ansible -inventory. Well, I can just pull this one up. And yeah, I can just do a -e and then say potato equals hot or something like that. And yeah, we'll see it right there. And this is also a variable that's globally available, essentially, right there. Cool. And so this -e flag also will give that variable a very high precedence. In fact, it might even be the highest precedence. So for example, I could also override a variable in my playbook by going back up to the Ansible playbook command, Ansible playbook experiment.yml, and I could do a -e. Maybe I should do the -e here, -e, and then I could override the satellite variable to something else like explorer. And if I run this and I scroll up a little bit, we can see that satellite is now equal to explorer, just like that. Sorry. There we go. And yeah, and moreover, I can do some other stuff with the extra vars, like run an ad hoc command, Ansible localhost, and then -e potato equals hot. And then I can use the debug module and have it print out a var like potato. I'm just trying to show you all different kinds of angles of how this works. And let's try that out. And yep, the potato is indeed hot. So yeah, that's pretty cool, right? Now let's finish off the video by trying to use variables to retrieve the results of running a command. So this boils down to using the register statement, which you can use with a task in your playbook. So let's try that out. Say we wanted to grab something important like the UUID of a network manager connection for one of our interfaces. So I mean, that's oddly specific, but we can do that in the shell with nmcli con show, right? But actually the terse option is a little bit better suited for this. And then we can just use something like awk and give it the field separator. And then maybe we want to limit it to only one specific interface name. So we'll search for enp1s0 and then an end of line character. And then we'll print the second column. Whoops, print the second column just like that. Let's try that out. There we go. So now what we can actually do is take this command right here. I'll just copy it, and we'll implement it in a playbook that will run, and it'll basically run this command on all of the hosts, and we'll be able to grab the UUID, and then we'll register it into a variable. That's what I'll show you in just a second. So I'm going to open up a new file. I'll call it experiment2.yml. And I'll just fill this in and I'll talk about it afterwards. All right, here's what I've come up with. We just have a play here that targets the app servers, and there's a task that runs a shell command, and we use the register keyword to grab the results from this task and store it in a variable called nmcli command results. And then we can just print that just like this with a debug and then the var option. So I'll just show you that first. I'll just save this and do an Ansible playbook experiment2.yml. And what we're going to see for each machine is basically the results of each of the commands, each of the shell commands. You can see that the UUID is actually the same on each of these machines, and that's nothing to worry about. That's because they're clones of each other. But on a real like production setting where you're not having like clones of machines, they're going to have different UUIDs. But anyways, so the standard out is one of the keys inside of this data structure that we have here. So what we can do is actually drill down into that by going back here and doing something like this. Standard out, just like that. And now let's try this again. So now we're just getting the UUID, which was the standard out of that shell command that ran on each of the hosts. So I hope that's super clear. One more bonus thing I guess I'll show you as well is how to use the set fact module. Not sure if it's exactly a module or a plugin, but we'll just call it a module. So we can do a set fact right here. So I'll just call this setting fact that just contains the UUID. And set fact, and I'm going to make this new variable called enp1s0 underscore UUID and make it equal basically what we wrote up here, except I'm going to need to template it. So do the quotes and that, and then I can just take this and put it right there, just like that. And now I could double down by using the new fact. And I'll use the debug module once again, if I can spell it. Debug var enp1s0 UUID. Let's try that out. Hopefully it'll work. And we're going to basically see the same information multiple times, but you can see that the value of this new variable or fact that we created is what we want it to be. And yeah, so it all worked out really well. And that's going to do it for this video. I hope it helped you review some more about Ansible. And yeah, see you around.